Welcome everyone. Today's session is on critical reading strategies. Specifically, we are going to look at the SQ4R process. During this presentation, I'll refer to readings as chapters, but I want to ensure that this terminology is inclusive of journals, articles, slideshows, presentations, or anything that has a transcript. So what is SQ4R? The SQ4R process is a highly researched, highly impactful reading strategy that will make your course readings feel less robotic, time wasteful, and dry. Instead, by using the SQ4R process, your reading sessions become an interactive activity with you leading your academic journey. This process is a doubly beneficial strategy because while you're learning, you're also creating in real time a study guide. Honestly, it just makes your pre-exam study sessions incredibly easier. The SQ4R process consists of 6 steps, which you can see here: survey and question, read, respond, and record, and review. Now let's look more into each of these steps and see just how quick and easy this process is. Step 1 is survey. The purpose of this goal is to gather a general sense of the topic and the author's intentions for the chapter. During a survey, you will be performing a scan of what the author chose to highlight as major areas of interest to you, the learner. Surveys are a scan and a scan only. You're not going to be doing deep reading right now, not yet. First, survey the introduction and the conclusion. Skip the middle for now. These are going to give you the purpose of the chapter and the summative findings that were explored. Second, survey the chapter to find the points of interest noted by the author. Points of interest will be represented as subheaders and section titles, pictures with subtext, graphs, charts, and the sneakier ones, bold and italicized words. Those will usually be hidden within the paragraphs. When your author chooses to note these points of interest, she's essentially shouting to you, this is important information, and you should take her advice on that. Third and finally, look for author finales. And these are represented as end of chapter questions or practice reviews. If the author or publisher felt it was worth their time to create these for you, then they strongly believe what they taught you in the chapter should let you answer them. Overall, the survey step should take you no more than a few minutes, and it'll have you prepped with a handful of main concepts or theories to be on the lookout for. It's like having spoiler alerts of what you should know once you do start reading the chapter. Step 2 is question. As you begin to dive into the chapter, ask investigative questions and write them down. These questions are meant for your eyes and your brain, so make them challenging to you and cover whatever you're unsure of. Later, when you read the chapter, you'll be investigating the author's work to find answers instead of just trying to get through to the next page. To start creating questions, use your points of interest that you recalled from the survey and turn every subheader and section title into a question. For example, if the subheader states nephrons, that's pretty basic, but we do know we're about to learn something about them. So let's rephrase that subheader of nephron into the question, what is the nephron and what is it made of? As you move through the chapter survey that you completed, keep asking questions. For example, why is it important that I understand how the nephron functions? What medications or diseases will help or harm? How will I know when a nephron is failing? The further into your studies or your program that you are, the deeper your questions will become. You're always going to start with your entry-level investigative questions when you're first learning something. So that's your who, what, where, when, whys. Then you're going to evolve and begin asking bigger questions such as the hows. How is one concept linked to another? How do they impact one another? What do they include and exclude compared to others? And so on. Your questions are going to grow into something complex. Your readings are now coming alive through your thoughts and your theories. The questions you just wrote down to investigate are going to transform how you interact with your reading. Step 3 is read. It may seem funny that step 3 in a 6-step process for critical reading is when you actually start the act of reading. But trust me, by being equipped with your survey and outfitted with your investigative questions, now is the exact right time to enter into the act of reading. When reading, you will be hunting for answers to your investigative questions and flagging information that was hiding within the paragraphs. If while reading you discover new concepts or points of interest, just add them to your list. but don't answer them yet. Please remember that this is not the survey step. This is the read step. So work methodically through the chapter's paragraphs and untangle the information to help find your answers. Now, let's talk about the scenario of what happens when you're confused by reading something that doesn't make sense or doesn't seem related to any concept or question you had anticipated. This is a good time to slow down your pace and reset. Go back to the last statement sentence that made sense. Typically, there will be a bridging thought put out there by the author to pull you into this currently confusing material based off of the last paragraph or area that made sense. Does it seem to be entirely new information? Or does it look to be information related to something the author believes that you should already know about the theme or topic? If this is entirely new information the author is not stopping to explain, you may need to look something up online to help boost your comprehension. However, if the material is building off of what was presumed as known material, you may need to go back to what is being referenced and review to find the connecting link. Two usual culprits for finding yourself needing to go back and reference and review are that either A, you may not have realized that information was important the first time, or B, you just may have accidentally forgotten it. To give an example of deciding between if something is new information or known information, let's imagine you're reading an article about feminist theory in relation to Shakespeare, and you are stumped by a claim the author makes about the female characters in King Lear. If you hadn't been required to read King Lear before now, then this is new information, and searching online for supplemental insight can inform the author's current claim. If, however, you have been required to read King Lear, then this connection was presumed to be known information, and you are going to have to go back and look at your King Lear notes. Step 4 is respond. While reading, you may have moved back and forth between your chapter, your questions, and your thoughts. And this is all part of the process of becoming an active engager of material instead of a passive consumer. During the response step, we're going to develop customized notes by answering our questions. Be sure to always start your response with your own words. Use the book only to verify specifics or to confirm spelling. We do this because we want to fully engage our brain in comprehension and challenge ourselves to not rely on just our textbook. In most exams, you won't have access to your textbook, so by doing this now, you're strengthening up that skill, and you'll be really well trained and really ready for that moment at the exam. Now, what you do when you're doing your reading is grab the questions you created during step 2 and just begin answering them. Use your own words to describe your answer. Make it make sense to you. Then, begin writing down or highlighting key words, key terms, key concepts, or key persons. If there is something that has stuck out to you from your reading, add it to your key points list. What you're doing here through your responses is kickstarting your comprehension of material while also creating your study guide. Gone will be the days of reading and rereading and rereading and rereading your textbooks only to feel like nothing has stuck. Now, before we move on to step 5, let's quickly chat about the phenomenon of the unanswered questions, because this is probably going to happen at some point. When there are questions or concepts you know you're struggling with, you can bring your book back to fill in knowledge gaps. Quickly hop to the applicable section, review it, close the book, and answer those last lingering questions. The main thing is to use your own words. But Melissa, you say, I reread the section and I still don't know how to answer the question I have. In this scenario, it's quite possible the question you ask is going to just turn out to be a poor fit. By this, I mean the question might be too vague, too specific, or just turned out to be too unassociated. Remember that when you wrote your questions, you hadn't yet read the chapter, and on occasion you may just miss the mark. Knowing that a question asked is no longer relevant to your learning is a realization in itself, and that's huge. It shows you've grasped material. If it doesn't serve to enhance your understanding, you don't need it. Finally, it's important to note that if during the response step you realize there are investigative questions you didn't know to include, no problem. Here's another time that you can add them in, answer them, and you're all set. Step 5 is record. This builds off of the response step, except now instead of answering very specific questions or creating a list of key terms, names, concepts, and persons, you're going to draft a knowledge summary, a record of your thoughts, if you will. This summary will act as an overview of what was learned in this chapter, the main ideas that the chapter taught, how it interrelates or correlates to other chapters, and inclusion of any key quotes or passages, and make sure you cite those. The product you create through this step will serve as a mini review of your chapter. When you combine this with your questions, you have now made a condensed and customized study guide for yourself, preloaded with review questions, list of terms, overview of concepts, and they're all going to be written in a way that makes absolute sense to you. As an added bonus, if you recall from the last step, you may encounter questions in the future that you need to do back referencing. By having this custom-made study guide created, you're going to be able to read your own record of thoughts, summary, and everything will just click for you so much faster. Step 6 is a review, and this is when we reap the rewards from the thoughtful work you've been doing each chapter. As mentioned, when you have done steps 1 to 5, you have been creating that study guide in a very manageable and meaningful way. Use this guide best by undergoing frequent and consistent reviews. We recommend quizzing yourself weekly using the questions you've created. We also recommend reading your knowledge summaries or your record of thoughts of the chapters on a weekly basis too. Remember that these will be short and sweet reviews, and refreshing on them will keep close the concepts that you've learned and build those interconnections for you. Unfortunately, many of us find out way too late that we are about to start a huge exam, but we have forgotten somehow what was written in those first 4 chapters of our 10-chapter textbook. By doing the weekly reviews, you keep the material fresh, and you find the connections between your readings and your lectures. You'll begin to weave together your course as a whole throughout the entire semester instead of staring down a whole mountain of information in your final days or weeks. In conclusion, critical reading is designed to be an act of academic exploration, and the SQ4R process is an effective learning strategy that is fully customizable to your preferences. You become the co-author of your learning by engaging course material in a whole new way that respects your ability to comprehend and clarify information all by yourself. If you haven't been using the SQ4R process yet, now is a great time to start. Just roll it out as your premier means of critical reading going forward. I want to give a quick thank you to the following research and resources which helped inform my work today. And a big thank you for your time. And remember, all things are achievable. You just need to find the right tools. Thank you.